Dave is the co-author of the Disney animated app, and as well, among his many titles, I had to ask him specifically how he wanted to be introduced, so I got it right. He's a producer and creative director at Walt Disney Animation Studios. So let's hear it for Dave Bossert.
Hi everybody, thank you for that. Hi, how you doing? I hope you're all having a great time out here. Yeah? Wow. Hey listen, Mark said I was co-author. The other author is a really terrific guy, Teo Gray. I know he's sitting out here someplace and I want to give him a shout out. So Teo, stand up. There he is. Teo Gray. And also there's three lovely ladies. Whoa, we're getting too close here, Mark. There's three lovely ladies that were really instrumental in putting this app together. We're really excited about this. It is Diana Wangoza. Stand up, Diana. I know you're there. There she is. Allison Maruka. Where's Allison? There she is over there. And Wendy Lefcon. Where's Wendy? Wendy Lefcon was Disney Publishing. This was an amazing, amazing effort. And I think, should we show this trailer?
Yeah, let's show this trailer.
This is awesome. This is absolutely an awesome app, and it was a great partnership with Disney Interactive, Walt Disney Animation Studios, and Touch Press. And I got to tell you, my colleague, I'm going off the reservation. I'm going off script, okay? I'm going off script, folks. But I got to tell you, I took this iPad around with me. I was over at Imagineering earlier in the week for some meetings, and I was showing colleagues just some aspects of this app, and it was unbelievable. They were flipping out. People can't wait to get their hands on this. And we're excited because we had so many people at Walt Disney Animation Studios get involved with this and put their hands on it and touch it, and we want to share so much of this artwork. Really, the app itself isn't big enough. We wanted to put more in. We were limited by the size of the app, but it's just fantastic. So I want to introduce my colleagues from Walt Disney Animation Studios. First up, we have Brittany Lee, who's a tremendous visual artist. She's just finishing up some tremendous work on Frozen. Brittany Lee, you're going to sit right here. Next up, we have Amy Smeed. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric Goldberg, excuse me. Legendary and legendary. An old friend of ours at Feature Animation. Eric, you're going to come right around and sit right here. There we go.
Thank you.
Next up,
I'm actually Amy.
Amy Smeed is a tremendous animator. Again, she just literally this past week finished animating on Frozen. Amy, come on up. And we've got Mike Kaschalk. Mike Kaschalk's an old friend of mine. He's an animation supervisor, effects animator extraordinaire. He had a big hand in helping us with this new app. So Mike, come on up. And last but certainly not least, we've got Darin Hollings. He's a visual effects supervisor with Walt Disney Animation Studios. He's actually currently working with me in the special projects group. He's been at the studio for, I don't know, way too many years, right? I don't know. We're all old people now. Mark, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave. So, I'm going to be selfish, and I'm going to ask them a few questions first, and then I think afterward we'll open it up and take questions from the audience. So the first question is for Dave. And so Dave, how do you take 90 years of animation history and cram it all into a single application? How'd you do that?
It was hard, Mark. It was really, no, it was absolutely an unbelievable process to start with. But you have to realize, with 90 years of animation history, the Walt Disney Animation Studios, we have the Walt Disney Animation Research Library, which has some really tremendous exhibits here at D23. They have over 70 million pieces of artwork from our animated films. So it's just, you know, there's so much great stuff. So we really went around and talked with our colleagues and many others throughout the Walt Disney Animation Studios and really got their input. And we wanted to construct this in a way that mimicked, in a broad sense, our production process, how we make our movies at Walt Disney Animation Studios today. And, you know, that's really what we did, and it was tough. We had to make tough choices because there's so much great stuff you want to put in. You got to sit there and balance it out.
Great, thank you. So my next question is actually for Brittany. So Brittany, as a visual development artist, your role is to build these rich and beautiful and compelling worlds for the characters to inhabit. How do you do that? What inspires you? What are the things you look at in order to do this?
Well, it varies for every project because we're always diving into research. That's one of the first things that visual development artists do. We either go on research trips or we open books or go on the internet even. But for the film that I've contributed to, or one of the films I've contributed to so far, for Wreck-It Ralph, we were working on Sugar Rush, and so we really wanted to be authentic. So we looked at a lot of video games because it was a video game, but we also we wanted it to be made out of candy. We wanted it to feel like a world made out of candy. So, well, I saw The Little Mermaid. That's what decided it for me. That was it. And I was just so infatuated. I just wanted to be part of that process. At the time, I understood.
Part of that world.
Exactly. I didn't want to say it here. I was trying really hard.
Drop the other
Anyway, I wanted to get as close to the artists and the artistry as possible, but I was 6. I had no way of doing that. So I just drew. I drew constantly. I drew from memory. I drew whatever I could find relating to The Little Mermaid or anything else animated. And I would actually take the VHS when it came out on VHS and would pause it on every frame to try to learn how to animate that way. So I learned actually that if you hit at least on my VCR, if you hit the pause button just over and over and over and over again, it would actually advance in frames, and so that's how. So I try to learn to animate that way. So I've been telling everyone that I really wish I had when I was 6 years old, so that I could just use it and flip frame series things like this, because that would have really probably been a great creative outlet otherwise, because it was really just, I needed to get it out. And I didn't know how to do it other than sending a drawing to the Disney Channel.
Thank you. So now, Eric, one of the things we're most excited about with Disney Animated is the ability to inspire a whole new generation of animators on a platform that's familiar to them and very popular, like the iPad. You've had sustained inspiration over a long period of time in many, many films. And how does that happen? Where does it come from?
Well, you know, many of us have our animation heroes, and some of us are old enough to have actually known some of them and worked with them. And unfortunately, they're not here anymore. So an app like this gets to introduce to a new generation the kind of stuff that they pass down to us. It's a kind of thing where they've reproduced verbatim the 12 principles from Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston's The Illusion of Life book. But now being an app, we can illustrate it with clips. And this is the thing that really I go nuts for. If you click on Doc, you can see this animation here by Bill Titla. Now, most pencil tests for these films don't exist anymore, but the drawings do, the Animation Research Library. And here's what you can do. You can scroll through it, as Diana is doing, and look at it frame for frame. You can also see the drawing numbers, the in-between charts. This is, in case you don't understand, this is crack for animators, okay? This is amazing. And there is no such app anywhere that gives you this material, or with this clarity, because it's all been newly scanned from the original artwork. You are seeing this art for the first time, frame by frame, beautiful. You can blow it up. It's amazing. And as far as the 12 principles go, there are things that can be demonstrated as well with some of the applications they put in. So if you want to take a quality like squash and stretch, for example, they have an app here where you can actually calculate your own squash and stretch on a bouncing ball. And just for fun, they put Sour Bill's face on it. But you can vary it.
There's somebody walking towards this auditorium.
And basically, okay, I was playing with this for about, 2 hours the other night. It's just so much fun. But it actually helps show you the degree of squash that would work, how much of an arc you should put on the ball, all of those kinds of things that animators need to know. And then we apply those principles to our own animation.
Eric, I was just going to interject. Along with the 12 principles verbatim from the book, we got permission from Frank Thomas's children and Ollie Johnston's children to do this. But we also went in and interviewed some of our contemporary animators, including Eric and Amy, and actually put some quotes in. They're sprinkled through those 12 principles and how those principles are being applied with how we're making our films today.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. So now going to Amy. So Amy, it's so important to imbue these stories with character and with life. And how does that happen within the CG animation process? How do you do this?
Sure. So first off, when we're starting a film, we're really trying to figure out what type of character we're working on, who that character is, what motivates them. And once we start working in our scenes, what I do personally is I'll go down to our reference room. We have a reference room where we can act out our scenes. And there's a section in the app that shows one of our animators.
This is an example of one of our animators acting out her scene, which is done in our reference room. This can help us with body mechanics, as well as unexpected but natural acting elements that we might not otherwise think of.
So that just shows a tiny glimpse, I guess, of us in the reference room. So what I do is I go into the reference room and I act out my scene dozens of times, and I'm really trying to put myself into that character, what they're feeling at that exact moment. I go back to my desk and I'll analyze all the performances, and I'll take notes of what I did like, what I didn't like, and start animating. And for example, on Bolt, I was animating the dog, and I would get down on all fours and act like a dog. And it's not to say that my mechanics are going to be different than a dog, obviously, but I'm looking for acting elements that I can put into that animation. And then on Tangled, I worked on the scene towards the end of the movie. It was the Flynn death scene with Rapunzel where she's singing and crying over him. And I went to the reference room that morning and I really tried to put myself into a place. I thought of something in my personal life to get me to that state that Rapunzel was in. And it was great. I went back up to my room and when I was analyzing the performance, I could see things that my throat was doing as I was singing and crying, and certain breaths that I was taking as I was singing. And it was great because I was able to then put that into my animation of Rapunzel, and I felt that that really helped make it more believable as a character and put you in her position. In terms of CG and 2D, I feel like for CG, the computer is just another tool for us, the same way a pencil would be to Eric, the same way a puppet or a piece of clay would be to a stop-motion animator. And what we're doing is we have something, it's like a digital puppet, and there's tons of controls in there which are created from our rigging department. And we have controls over things like the eyelashes and fingertips, and then, you know, it's the full skeleton. We need that to be created before we can start. And as I'm keying out my scene, I'm always thinking about, you know, line of action and appeal, silhouette, the same things that Eric is thinking about. And I'm trying to not let the computer hinder me in any way. And I feel like we're really handcrafting our scene. And after I'm getting my key poses, it would be really easy for me to let the computer give me those in-betweens. But the computer has no understanding of what timing is and appeal. And so we are going into each of those frames and trying to craft them to get exactly what we want to make a sincere and believable character.
If I can just echo Amy for a moment, it's really true. We're both aiming for the same goal with different paint boxes.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to create characters that are memorable, believable, and true.
Yeah.
And, you know, those principles have been passed down, and we still hold them very high.
Yeah.
Sure. So here's a character who is really subtle and, you know, very, very, very believable.
Wow! Wow! Does it feel good to be out of there?
Anyway, it's the kind of thing where I can certainly say I use squash and stretch on the character. I can certainly say I used appeal, I used line of action, all the stuff Amy is talking about, you know, to create that kind of a character. And you vary it for the content and the medium as well, you know. Even within the hand-drawn realm, okay, you can turn the genie's head into a toaster, but you can't turn Aladdin's head into a toaster. So, you know, you play those varying degrees of what you can do with a particular character.
You know, I wanted to point out what Diana just went into is the timeline feature within the app, and that actually shows all 53 feature films, including Frozen. And if you tap on any one of those, you actually get to see, you'll read a synopsis of the movie, you'll be able to see the main characters. Some of those clips are interactive, you can touch on them, it'll play a clip. Some of the films have trailers in them. There's some fun facts, the length of the film, how many awards, the Academy Awards it won. You can also listen to the sample of the hit songs in any of those movies that are linked to iTunes. So, I mean, it's very robust. There's a lot of great information. What was that? Okay, can't do it there. Okay. All right. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Amy. So, Mike, snow is cold.
Yes. I think so.
So how do you imbue something like snow, you know, with character, personality, and emotion? Because you've done this, you know, both for the movie Frozen. I kind of made an idiot of myself this morning, you know, fooling around with the motion capture tool in the Walt Disney Animation Studios because I got carried away. And we also have a feature within the app that uses some of the same algorithms that were developed at Walt Disney Animation Studios to illustrate Elsa's snow. So tell us a little bit behind that, how you made something that's so cold, so full of life.
Well, when you're working on an effect, you know, especially something that's based off of nature to begin with, you know, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make it look realistic, and generally you want to make it look cool. But at Disney, we really try to push that boundary, especially if you're trying to get something magical to happen, you know, to that effect. And to accomplish that, the only way you can really do it is to get the emotion of what the scene is trying to lyrically say at that time to come through to the audience and give that effect true character. And to give something character, you have to play with the composition, you have to play with the timing, and the way that we do that is just like I'm using my hands right now and I'm gesturing to you. I could convey a blast of snow that might be really elegant and graceful and peaceful by moving my hands like this, and then it comes down and settles. Or if it's a really aggressive, violent snowstorm and you have something like that, it comes through. And when we're communicating with each other as artists and also with the directors, we're doing the same thing. And sometimes we even capture ourselves, and that data goes into the computer systems and gives us a starting point that we can kind of build off of to accomplish that. And so in this app as well, there is this same gesturing that we're doing for a magical snow effect that you can create interactively. And it's very close to the foundational setup that we did when we're creating, hey, this effect needs to be able to do these particular goals, and we build off of that. And so it's a really exciting process and very emotionally driven.
Great. So Darin, as visual effects supervisor, you have the responsibility to bring all of these components together. So tell us a little bit about how you bring together, how you bring it all together at the end.
Well, being a visual effects supervisor is a really kind of hard thing to explain because it's different on every project and every film. I mean, basically, with each, you're one of the earliest people on, and you're on to the very end, and you got to see what the film is and what challenges each film holds, and then look at all the work that's been done before and all the processes that have been done before, and figure out what of that you're going to use, and then what new things you're going to figure out. Then you got to get kind of the people, teams together, because you really don't do anything, you're just really glue. You got to get the people together, the software together, and the techniques together, and get those all in motion, running for the pre-production and the production. And then you just kind of sit back and talk to everybody as you go, and look for problems, and when there's problems, you solve them, and you just keep moving forward from there.
Right, so that was a good way of wrapping up this part. So I only have one more question for you guys. And especially working within Disney Interactive Entertainment, I mean, there's this appreciation that the technology just changes so rapidly. I mean, the world is moving so quickly. And, so in that context, I'd love to hear from all of you, what excites you most about the future of animation and the future of animation at the Walt Disney Animation Studios?
I'm going to jump in and tell you that that's what excites me, is all that change. Because there's always something new coming along, and there's all kinds of incredible technologies that are being developed, just industry-wide, but also within the animation studio at Disney. And I have to tell you, John Lasseter has a famous quote. He says, art inspires technology, but technology drives art. And it's just, it's so exciting to go into work every day and to be exposed to some new development and to be able to imagine how that can be applied to what we're doing. And that's what's really exciting about it.
I would just say the endless possibilities. I mean, it's very similar to what you're saying. It's just, we don't know what tomorrow will bring with technology and with the stories that we're telling. And that's really what what we're all here for the stories. And the fact that we are constantly getting new tools to be able to help us better tell those stories makes every day an adventure, essentially. So.
One phrase John Lasseter liked to use, and he used it quite a bit in the presentation in the arena yesterday, is what if. Pixar in particular likes what if, but I think you can extend that to what if we could, and I think that's the place where the studio is right now. What if we could combine CG animation and 2D animation and you get Paperman? What if we could create snow that feels emotional and we get Mike's Snow? It's the kind of thing where so often the interesting content in the movie dictates new development, that just enables us to tell our stories that much better. And I think that's really an exciting time for the studio.
Yeah, I agree. We don't even know what to expect, and you're looking for those stories to dictate. And there was a time on Rapunzel when they did tons of technology, because there was a time we weren't allowed to touch hair. It was too hard to do in CG. And when we were working on that movie, you know, that was part of her. We needed to find a way to be able to do that and have her interact with that. And that's just an example of the story dictating, you know, finding this new technology. And who knows what could happen. It's exciting.
It is exciting. There's this barrier that nature provided us that stops us from sharing our imagination, and we have to find creative ways to do that with each other. And one of them is animation. And how we explore what that communication is. Technology gives us new avenues that inspires us of new ways that we can share more of what our imagination is with each other. And that need, that drive to want to do that and to find these new ways to push the boundaries of what that communication can be drives the technology. And then when you see that new technology and it's like, oh my gosh, I can show this in a way that I always saw in my mind, but the technology limited how we can do it. And that cycle just constantly allows us to create things that are really new.
I think what excites me is walking through the front doors of Disney every morning and just thinking that I might be able to give to the kids of today just a little bit of the magic that I felt when I was a kid going to the parks and seeing the film. That's what I think is super exciting.
Great. So, mercifully, I've run through all of my questions. So, so now I welcome, I welcome on behalf of the panel questions from the audience. And I think we have folks with mics who are going around, so if you just indicate that you're interested.
Can we bring the house lights up
Yeah.
a little bit so we can see? There we go. Excellent. Wow.
So if anyone has a question for our panel, please go ahead. I think we have someone over here.
While he's getting the microphone there, I know you had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Does Disney Animated have tutoring?
Does Disney Animated have tutoring?
Okay.
Does Disney Animated have tutoring?
Does the animator?
I couldn't hear it.
Does the app have tutoring?
It won't teach
Yes.
you how to animate, but it will show you the principles. But let's go back to the other question on Penelope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question was, how did we create Penelope? So there's a team of character designers that are creating her design, and then it comes to our department. We're really trying to figure out, who is Penelope? And she starts out and she's a little bit bratty, and you kind of you find ways to make her a very unique character. And it was the supervising animator was actually my husband, Tony Smeed. And he spent a lot of time just trying to figure out, who she is and what motivates her. But it's a time-consuming process, but it's also really fun at the beginning of production to figure out who those characters are. But it's definitely a team as well, because we have our character designers who are coming up with her design, and the visual development artists, and the modelers, and the riggers. So it really is a team of people, and then it's kind of up to our department to figure out character-wise who she is.
Not to mention the voice artist too.
Oh, Sarah Silverman, of course, sorry, yes. Yeah, she was an amazing voice to work with. Yes, it was great. It was fun to work with her. That was driven by the story department. Jen Lee was one of the writers on that, and she also was one of the writers of Frozen, but it was part of the story that came up with that idea of her being the glitch.
Hey, while they're running around with the mic, Diana, can you bring up the color map? Because this is something I think this is really awesome. This is all 52, because we haven't finished Frozen yet. So this is Snow White all the way through Wreck-It Ralph, all in one page. And this was the brainchild of our co-author, Teo Gray. And it has over 26,000 embedded images on it. And you can go through and scroll through the entire, each one of our feature films. And this is just the most awesome reference that any of us could ever hope for. We've got a question back there? Yeah? Go ahead.
Hi. I would love to know, just curious, what everybody's favorite part of the app is. Like, is it the things that you've worked on in there that everybody else gets to see, or is it a different department that now you get to see more of that maybe you don't work with every day?
I would tell you that my favorite part of the app is the app. Because
Good answer.
no, there's so much really great stuff in there. And what we were trying to do too, and I have to tell you, working on this with the team, it was really we wanted to make an effort to showcase things people haven't seen before. Yes, there's some familiar scenes from a lot of our movies in there, but there's also a robust amount of material that hasn't been really widely seen. We have some maquettes in there. I don't know if we can go to one of the maquettes real quick, but there's one maquette, the hippo, well, actually, here's the Pinocchio one. The Pinocchio maquette. This is really terrific. This is a one-of-a-kind maquette that was found after half a century locked in a cabinet in the basement of the animation building at the Walt Disney Studios. And they found it, it was like 6 or 8 or 10 years ago, something like that. And it needed a little bit of TLC, a little bit of restoration, but it's the only one that's in existence, and it's really under lock and key, and very few people have had an opportunity to see this, and we had the chance with this app to actually share it with you, and also you can sit and rotate it. You can spin this. You can just move your finger across that screen and spin this maquette around, and I think there's about a dozen of those in here. And we tried to pick ones that, people really, have never seen before. There's a hippo from Fantasia that, again, one-of-a-kind maquette that was used back in 1940, 1939, and sits in a cabinet, and very few people get a chance to see it, and I think this is just really great to be able to share these.
Can I pick up on that for
Yeah,
a second? Because, what this app really is what's behind everything you see on screen. You guys see the finished product, but this takes you through the entire process. So you get to see the visual development, you get to see storyboards, you get to see rough animation. They have a thing on here that they call layered clips, where you can see the animation in full color, and you can see the stages that preceded it underneath, and you can call those up. Like, for example, you can see Tramp waking up in the morning and having his shower, and underneath it is the pencil test of that. And you can examine that however you want. They do the same thing for the CG scenes. They start with the blocking, and they do the low-res version. And every stage is represented here. I think what it does is actually help you guys understand the amount of creativity and really hard work that goes into what you enjoy as a finished product.
Yeah, that's great. More questions? Okay, we got a question over there.
Hi, how do you decide which aspects of the animation process can be outsourced and which aspects must be kept in-house?
So at feature animation, we have the luxury of doing everything in-house. So I don't know if you speak more about the outsourcing, but yeah, for our division, we're doing everything inside our building.
Yeah, so like a movie like Frozen, that entire movie is being made inside Walt Disney Animation Studios in Burbank. And if you ever drive along the 134, you can see the big letters that say animation, and there's a blue Sorcerer's Apprentice hat, and that's really where those movies are being made, right there. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the process. So is the story written and then handed over to the animators and you make it happen? Or is a concept come up and then you work in parallel to write the story knowing what's capable for the animator to do? Well,
I think Eric should answer this because he's in the process of developing a couple little projects.
it's always a collaborative process. And that also means things go back and forth and things change. If you wanted to put an order to it, you know, usually a director will come up with a concept for a film, pitch it, and if they like it, they'll put it into development. Then during development, they would use people like Brittany to develop the graphic style of the film, what the characters may look like, knowing kind of a rough idea of who the characters are and the basic story content of the film. They would write a script. They would do storyboards simultaneously to writing a script. If you've never seen a storyboard, it's like a comic book version of the film before any of the animation takes place. And that's really the first place where you see, is this going to work as visual storytelling as well as verbal storytelling? And from that point, we film the storyboards or scan them in and, you know, actually make reels to play for the crew and see what's working and what isn't working. And from there, it would go to layout, which actually sets the stage for the characters to work in. Then from there, it would go to animation, you know, and the directors would say, you know, what's required for the character in each scene, what the technical requirements are. But basically, you know, that's when the acting comes in. And then the further processes, if it was hand-drawn, you know, it would go to cleanup animation, and then it would go to effects animation, and then it would go to final color, you know, with the backgrounds and all put together. For CG, you know, it would go to, you know, animation finaling, you know, after everybody's happy with the animation. It would go through lighting, you know, so that, and the effects animation even before lighting, and they would then composite everything from there. And you can see all of that mapped out in this app.
Yeah, I mean, the way this is laid out, it's a broad overview of how we make our movies today at Walt Disney Animation Studios. And there's a question over here, our guy with the mic. There we go.
Hello. First, I want to say thank you, Eric, for Get a Horse. And
Thank you. Best audience ever.
The question I have is this a 21st century, or were you inspired by the Solstice notebooks that you can see at the Walt Disney Family Museum?
Okay, I'm not sure of the question again. Is it for anybody here? Or
For any of you, I'm sure you're familiar with the Solstice notebook.
Yes.
Okay, is this a 21st century? Were you inspired by that to do this?
You know, not really, but in a sense, I mean, you know, the Solstice notebooks are essentially, you know, really a detailed set of notebooks that were done of a lot of the visual effects from the late 1930s into the 1940s that were found, and they're on display up at the Disney Family Museum up in the Presidio in San Francisco. But, you know, in a sense, this is really a beautiful document about how Walt Disney Animation Studios made films with Snow White, and you know, early on, there's a lot of history here, but how we're making our films today. And it kind of runs that whole gamut of essentially 75 years of feature film animation, plus we do have some clips from some of the early shorts that were used as experiments, essentially, experimentation, and the techniques developed in those shorts were applied to the feature films. So it really gives a great in-depth overview. I think there's some more questions. There we go.
Yeah, two more questions.
Two more questions. There's a few people in the way back there, too.
Got a couple back here. First, I'd like to comment that this looks like an amazing showcase of like the history of animation for Disney. My question is, what do you think of like the hand-drawn animations as Disney seems to be going away from it, and with the future generations may not really see hand-drawn animation in movies anymore?
Yeah, but you know something that's funny? Eric and I were talking about this backstage before we came out here. We're actually doing 2D animation on a regular basis. We don't have a 2D animated feature film in production at the moment, but we do have, 2D animators in the building doing 2D animation. There's a lot of 2D animation reference that's used for our CG pictures.
Diana, can you pull up the King Candy text?
Yeah, we'll show you something from Wreck-It Ralph, which is in the app here.
So before, they actually went ahead and modeled and rigged King Candy for Wreck-It Ralph, they asked me to take the character on a hand-drawn test drive. And so I did a fairly extensive scene here of King Candy in 2D, which then inspired them.
Okay.
So you can see, we're still using 2D.
We got one more, we got a question here, yeah?
Hi, I was wondering about, talking about Wreck-It Ralph. I was wondering if you, in the character development, if you use, like on Vanellope's her stocking, she looks like she has the double stripe, like in the tree. Is that also because the tree glitches and she's a glitch?
It might be. Actually, that is a great question, and I have no idea if anyone ever thought of that. Because she always had those stripes from the very earliest drawings of Vanellope. Her tights always had those stripes, and Lorelai Bobet was one of the artists who really worked on her character and her costume. And so that might be an instance where the double stripe joke from the tree might have been inspired by her. So actually, I don't know. I'm going to have to go back to work and ask someone that. Good question.
I haven't had a chance to get too much into the app yet, but I noticed I had a question for the sound and music design. Is there a part of it that has plays that sequence and then has the the background and how that sound is being created?
As far as the sound and music goes, there's a whole chapter devoted on sound and music, and we kind of talk about how that process developed and how we're doing it today. And there's some really great clips of some of our talent, our voice talent. We also have a great clip of Walt in here, and there's so much material. I think somebody told me there's like 10 hours worth of programming or something like that in here, but it's just pretty phenomenal.
So I was looking at it, and it was like it would play a clip, and I was thinking that it'd be nice if there was a side-by-side to where you could see that actually happening.
You see an actual soundtrack moving along? Is that what you're saying?
Not the soundtrack itself, but say there's a sound effect that's being made, and inside the clip, for a clip.
Okay.
And then, but you're actually seeing that, or even music for that matter, and you're actually seeing that.
Yeah, go ahead. There's a few examples of that.
Yeah, for the most part, you don't film people who are creating the sound effects, okay? So there really isn't a lot of documentation for that. However, and I think this is what you're alluding to, there's clips on there about how some of those effects were created for some of the films, like from Reluctant Dragon and things like that.
And there is a little bit of a before, so the sound effect being created for a train, and there's some other things that are in there. So I think there's one other person in the corner, he's just desperately had his hand up with the hat on. We should really just, somebody first. Both of you guys.
I was just curious, with the development of new technology, has it made animated films more expensive to make or less expensive?
We'll give the Rain Man answer. It's about $1. It's always, it's something that we get asked and we don't really talk about, Go ahead.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
What is your favorite animated movie that you worked on?
Is that for each one of us?
Yeah.
That I worked on, it's so hard. That's like asking what your favorite child is. You know what I mean? It's like so many, my daughter's pointing to herself right now. I'm speaking for myself. Every movie I've ever worked on holds a lot of great memories. There were challenges for those films. I oftentimes do tell people that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a particular favorite of mine, just because I had a chance to work overseas and it was a very international crew and all of that. But Brittany?
I have the same response in that I've only worked on 3 projects, but I love them all. Frozen is really up there for me right now. So yeah, I really love Frozen.
I agree with Dave's response that it's like asking you your favorite child.
My daughter's still pointing.
Yeah, okay. But that said, I mean, there are films that I feel warm to. I feel a huge warmth towards Aladdin. You know, that was my first gig. I had a blast working on Fantasia 2000 and doing 2 sequences with my wife, art directing. And we had, you know, and there's always great things along the way. I loved animating Lewis and Princess and the Frog. You know, it's a kind of thing where each of these things has a challenge and an interest and a personal feeling that you get from it.
Yeah, I agree with those guys. For me, working on Tangled was amazing. We got to work with Glenn Keane, and I feel like I learned so much from getting the chance to work with him, and I feel like my animation took a huge leap after working with that. So there's something about that. And then Frozen, which we're just finishing now in animation, was such a great experience, and there's something very, very special about it that you'll see. Hopefully you guys will all go see it. It's an amazing project, so it's hard to pick one, but I'll pick those 2.
And like you guys said, you know, the different creative challenges that each one brings is what makes the process so fresh every time. But I will say that my experience on Fantasia 2000 really did set the tempo for how I creatively kind of approach the engagement on every film I've been on since then.
I come from a live action visual effects background, so most of the films I worked on in my career have been live action visual effects. Like Kangaroo Jack, you know, the big meaty ones. But I'd say on the films I've worked at, I put probably the most hours of work into Ralph. I really like Ralph a lot.
So we've actually gone over substantially. We're going to have one more question, and then we're going to wrap up. We have somebody who's already has the mic.
Can we expect a full-length feature in the animated style of Paperman?
You know,
I don't think we're allowed to comment on that. Are we?
No, but
that's commenting on it, isn't it?
Well, I'll let you play with your semantics. I'll say this, we have a very fertile and burgeoning shorts program at the studio. And each of the shorts that we produce has interesting technical innovations involved in them, you know. And I think before long, those innovations will be worked into the feature films in one way or another.
I like the way you danced up to the edge.
Well, with that, you know, let's give really, really warm thanks to these folks. I make digital products for a living, and so it's what I do. You know, everybody on this panel, they have day jobs, you know, making magnificent things, but nonetheless, still found the time to contribute to this effort of producing the Disney animated app. So I really want to extend my personal thanks to all of you for your contributions and bringing this passion project to our Thank you, Dave, for co-hosting.
Thank you all.
So wait, before you leave, we have one more thing before the music goes up. You know, thanks to Mr. Teo Gray, who was introduced earlier, we have a giveaway, which is the color map that appears in the app, printed on a poster for you as you leave. So